the attitude is something where you need to observe the good, inculcate the good habits and ignore the bad habits. Whenever you are a part of a learning system, you need to understand what is the beneficial factors that are being told that we need to take inside. The more you educate, the more knowledgeable you become. You try to become more of a conservative because you understand the value and you react in that manner. Good morning and welcome to the session 6 in unit 2 of organizational behavior, where we are going to talk about the family and peer groups. Now, this is a very important concept that we are going to see here. Why? Because family and the peer groups are the actual connectivities of the attitude altogether. So starting here, attitudes like values are acquired from parents, teachers, peer group members. This is very important and a powerful statement also. When we are born, we have gone through a set of values, a set of training, a set of principles that have been brought up by our parents. Our parents are the first teachers who teach us how to behave, when to behave, what kind of behavior, what kind of reaction, how we need to speak, how we need to eat, how we need to walk. All those factors have been told by our parents. Parents are greater than teachers. Why? Because even though they might not be qualified, even though they might have not gone through a very high level of education or done their doctorates, but then they are the people who understand and who stay with you forever. Right from the day one of your birth till the very minute we are alive, it's because of our parents who give us the support, both in times of moral, mental and physical support altogether. Now, what happens here is that looking at our parents, we start developing certain characteristics, certain behavioral patterns and certain emotional background altogether. Now, that is the first learning that we have to get inculcated enough, because without that, we will not be able to build a strong or a positive attitude. So, it is very important for all of us to understand and to develop it altogether. So what we do is that in our early years, we begin a modeling of attitudes that we admire. Of course, when we are going to talk about our teachers and peer groups, it is not that easy. Why? Because after our parents, once we start entering into school, it is our teachers. The teachers mold their student with knowledge, with attitude, with a lot of different factors. So the day when we start learning, it might be just the alphabets, but even the way the alphabets are going to be taught to you matters a lot, because those things will really affect your learning, your perception about the factors. And then comes your peer group members. That will be your friends, that might be your colleagues, that might be your relatives, or that might be any ongoers altogether. When you are a part of all these three sectors, you develop a set of attitudes. Now, that set of attitudes is what is going to carry you forward in terms of thinking, in terms of making you more stronger day by day. So it is highly important for all of us, right from the early years, we begin modeling our attitude for those who we admire, respect, or maybe even fear. Now, there are three factors again we have to understand. Why? Because we learn attitudes through fear, through admiration, and to respect. We look at certain people with a great amount of respect. It might be your parents, it might be your teachers. We look at somebody else with admiration because of the skill or the talent that they have. Moment when you watch a TV, in that if you are able to see a movie or you are able to see a song, you are admiring the talent of the actor or the singer, and you want to develop an attitude like that. So that is where admiration comes inside you. And there are other factors which will create fear. Out of fear, you develop an attitude. You don't want to go there because it's a fear factor there. But that fear factor also develops an attitude in you. So when you look into the components, all the components interact with each other to form a complex structure of attitude inside your mind, body, and soul. You cannot give up on that. You believe that mind, body, and soul are three different factors, but the truth remains that all the three of them are connected. They react at each and every point of time. So that's how we come to this particular factor of the gathering of attitude. Now we observe that the way our family and friends behave will shape our attitude and behavior that we align with theirs. Now, whenever you select a friend right from the childhood, your parents are very, very cautious about it because they want you to be a part of the good company. They want you to be a part of the society which acknowledges, which helps you to gain knowledge, which helps you to get a good name, a good recommendation altogether. So, moment you join with your friends who are a bad company or who are people who do not have any good image in the society, the wrong attitude might develop in you. So our parents, our friends, our peer groups, teachers, all of them have been the moral value builders in us. They are the founders of laying you in terms of the attitude platform altogether. So that is why it is important for us observe the good and ignore the bad. Please do not try to start learning the bad things. Why? Because it's very difficult for you to go away from the attitude. So the attitude is something where you need to observe the good, inculcate the good habits and ignore the bad habits. Now you might say that so both good and bad are present in the society, in the system. How to separate it, how to delineate it? Our attitude comes in help for us. Our attitude tells which is good to absorb, which is good to filter. That's why attitudes are very, very important for us. Now, look at this statement also. We observe the way. We don't ask questions. We don't ask them for a class. We don't go for a tuition towards attitude. We observe and then we learn. We observe how our father speaks, how our mother speaks, how do they, react with strangers, how do they react with relatives, how do they serve food, how do they serve the hospitality, how do they maintain a distance with certain people. So every single day you are observing something new. That observation is laying a foundation for you to learn something better day by day. So that's why friends, family, peer groups are the models of behavior. When you choose it correctly, the behavior is also reflected on the correct side. Now, moving further, we do so without being told to do so and even without having a direct experience. None of us have. Now let's go back to the childhood days, a very, very primitive stage when a child starts learning to walk. Very important. That stage is very important. Why? Because the child has seen its parents walking. The child has even seen its grandparents walking. The child would have probably seen hundreds and thousands of people who are walking around it. Now the child is interested to stand up and walk by itself. But unfortunately, the child is not able to stand properly and walk. So what does the child do? Will it just give it up? Will it just say that, no, I will not walk since I'm going to fall down? No. The child will come back and say that, I will learn walking. I will learn to stand up on my own feet. So what does the child do? The child will start taking support of the wall, support of the bench, support of any object, and slowly start putting in the steps. At some point of time, it realizes that it has got the balance and it starts walking on its own. Now that's exactly what we mean to say in attitude also. We observe. We do things by ourselves even though we are not being asked. We do take up things without being taught about it. We observe it, we learn it, we inculcate it, and we start following it. So the moment the child starts walking, the next thing the child will think, can I also run? The child might have fallen down on the floor n number of times, but the child will not give up because the child feels that there is some problem. There is some challenge in that. We have to undergo through that challenge. We have to learn that challenge and we have to overcome it. That's exactly an attitude session is all about. We don't take separate tuitions. We don't take a separate learning from our parents. We just don't have an experience also. But we want to do it because we have observed and a mind is set for it. Followed by the attitudes are acquired from the peer groups in organization and the college also. Right from our childhood, we have been taught about examples. This is very, very important for all of us to understand about examples. Examples are something which are inbuilt in nature. You have to understand the example very, very clearly. If you're not able to understand with the example, you might not probably develop that attitude at all. So, whenever a teacher gives you an example in the class, what happens is that people follow the example strongly rather than the moral of the story. But here, what we try to say is that follow the moral rather than the story. The story is only a built-up situation. The story is only to draw your attention towards me. But what is more important is that what is the moral of the story? What is that I'm trying to say to you? So please get into that factor. That's what we want you to understand whenever you join an office, whenever you are a part of a learning system, you need to understand what is the beneficial factors that are being told that we need to take inside. Suppose we forget that beneficial factor and we are just carried away with that story, we will not develop a good attitude. We may fail there itself in terms of building up an attitude. Followed by, if a right thing is to visit Hot Millions or Domino's, you are likely to hold that attitude, because when you go to these shops like Hot Millions, Domino's, McDonald's, or when you start going to Burger King, there is some attitude in them. What is that attitude? The attitude to serve the customer, the attitude to keep the customer as the first priority, the attitude to finish the task within the time limit. Everything is so time well organized. This comes inside the organization because they have built a culture, they have built an attitude like this in every single employee who joins this company. They don't want employees to be different. They want the employees to be united when it comes to certain practices. And that's purely because of the attitude that gets built over a time period. That is why this example is important here. If your parents support a political party without being told to do so, then automatically you also start favoring the party. Just look at the example. In your house, if your father or mother just gave you an instinct to follow somebody, to just go ahead with that blindly, automatically you also start doing it without questioning. That's because it's a kind of attitude that starts stepping into you. You don't want to question. But the day when you start questioning and you get a different answer, you go away from the old one and your mind gets associated to the new attitude altogether. So, in the factors, we have to understand that it is the family and the teachers who have a direct influence in terms of the development factor. They have a very, very directive influence in terms of understanding it and taking it forward. Followed by the family and the peer groups. The neighborhood in which we live has a certain cultural facility, religious groupings, and the ethnic differences. Further, it has people who are neighbors. This is very, very important here. So the neighborhood in which we stay. Now let's come out of the family. Let's open the doors. Let's step out to the street. When we step out to the street, you see hundreds and thousands of people who live on the same street, who live on the same road, and who are all people just like you, having the same kind of expectation, same kind of needs and wants. So what are they? Who are they? Why are they like this? There are a lot of questions that starts coming in your mind. They follow certain religion, they follow certain practices, they follow certain dress methodology, they have a peculiar style of walking and talking. But is all this going to affect you? The answer is yes. Why? Because you are getting now carried away by the influences of your neighborhood. That culture, that philosophy, that feelings are now going to come inside you. That's where the attitude is now building in for you. These people may be northerners, southerners, we do not know. Which part of this world they live, we do not know. Why do they live from that country, we do not know. What is so great about that place, we do not know. Whenever you are being asked this question, which place do you come from? You only know the name of the place, but you might not probably know the history of the place. Doesn't bother you much. So wherever they are from, they are people. That people will have different attitudes, different cultures altogether. You have to accept them and you have to accept their ideologies too. Moment you start rebelling, moment you start feeling that this is not what I want, this is not what I expect, then automatically the culture breaks down. So that's why I say that whether you like it or not, there are certain factors which are inbuilt, which has to be there and which has to be taken up. Some of these we accept and some of these we deny, possibly we rebel. That's what we exactly come across. We rebel. We don't accept it. We want to go against. We want to challenge. We want to ask them 10 questions. Who are you? What are you? Why are you? Why do you do that? Because you feel what you are doing, what you are culturally brought up is right. So when you see somebody who's doing exactly opposite to your culture, when you see somebody who's doing something which you do not appreciate or which you do not know, you start rebelling against it. You feel that that's not a part of the society because I was not brought up like that. So that's where the rebelling factor comes into you. Then what happens is that the conformity or rebellion in some aspects is the evidence of attitude we hold. And that's what builds our attitude. Now, I would like to give you a simple negative example here. Please do not mind about it. What I'm trying to say here is, how does a person become a terrorist? Terrorism is not an act. Terrorism is in the mind. Moment you want to spread terror, moment you want to spread fear into this world, all you have to do is create a negative atmosphere in the world. And that negative atmosphere, when it gets translated to hundreds and thousands of people just like you, all of them have become a part of a terrorist group altogether. The objective of terrorism is not just to kill anybody. The objective of terrorism is not to make the world completely shiver. The objective of terrorism is to spread fear. And that's exactly how this starts getting into it. So the attitude of spreading fear, the attitude of getting into a negative composition altogether creates these kinds of unwanted social elements in the society. Followed by the economic status and occupation. Now, this is quite interesting for all of us because this is going to talk about you and me in particular. The economic status. Whenever you see people coming in big, flashy cars, staying in those big bungalows, you have a question in your mind, oh, they are very rich people, so that means they can afford. The question is now coming from the economic standpoint. What is that you are in the society? Who are you? How do you earn so much money? What work do you do? How much is it possible that you bought such a big car, such a big house? How much does it cost? What kind of lifestyle are you? Most of the times when we start browsing through our social media, the one thing that is very, very attractive is the gossip factor about the celebrities. When you see a new celebrity has bought a house worth of millions of dollars or spent some millions of dollars on the dog or cat which she carries as a pet, or has bought a latest swankiest car that is there in the society, the thought goes immediately on the status part. So this is status. This is the kind of life even I want to live because that's all about luxury. That's all about the hi-fi living. So occupation, economic status will definitely have a very, very great impact. That is going to tell you how much are we affected, how much are we getting carried away. So that's why the research findings have shown that unemployment disturbs former religious and the economic values. One of the biggest problem in the social stigma and the social status all about is the unemployment. Moment you get unemployed, your mind is completely unsettled. You become completely a troublesome element in the society. You are depressed. You are diluted. You are completely out of shape, both in mind, body, and soul, and you start putting yourself into a severe regression model altogether. You are disturbed and you want to disturb everything that's around you. So unemployment is a direct cause. Let's look at the rippling effect of it. Children of the professional classes tend to be conservative. The middle class, the typical factors, and respect for the laws of the country is associated with the increased years of higher education. The more you educate, the more knowledgeable you become. You try to become more of a conservative because you understand the value and you react in that manner. So this is very, very important. Knowledge will transform a man to a greater heights because knowledge gives you that position, that feeling that yes, you can do better. Yes, you can build a situation better, and yes, you will be able to transform things better. So that is why I would always say higher education is mandatory, because that will build a set of attitude in you. Followed by the mass communication. This is important. Why? Because attitudes are generally less as compared to the values. Now, what happens? Advertising messages that attempt to alter the attitude, for example. Now, there was a very, very beautiful advertisement here about the Hyundai car company itself that most of you might have seen in YouTube, that most of you might have seen in social media, where an army officer tries to go ahead and praise that Hyundai car driver for getting him on time for the interview, for attending his job. Now that shows the pride of a brand getting associated at a national level altogether. That is very, very important. Why? Because you see the amount of impact an advertisement, a news agency can create in the minds of the people. So it is very, very important that attitude will definitely help you to create an impact. The kinds of advertisement, the sound, the jingle, the tagline, the punch, the colors, every single factor will have an impact on your mind, which will create an attitude. Now that attitude, whether it is positive or negative, depends on how you look into the advertisement. So if the advertisement has got a far-reaching impact on your mind, then automatically you become even more positive. So that's why we say mass communication, reaching en masse through advertisement, will have a deeper impact altogether rather than just the normal advertising. That's why most of the people, when they advertise through papers, through social medias, or through any other channels, they want them to know what is it in terms of the media values. Now, the next thing is that look at the mass communication effect. The mass communication, direct personal, the association, family and peer groups, neighborhoods and economic status, these are the major components of the attitude. So you see all the six will have an entire factor, entire mixture and impact on the attitude, which is very, very, very important. Why? Because that will actually tell you what needs to be done. That will actually tell you how it needs to go about. So this is why attitude is a collection of all these things put together. Attitude is never a single value. It is not a unidimensional factor, or it's a multi-dimensional factor. All these things will definitely compromise and will definitely try to make a bigger self out of you. With this, I come to the end of this particular session. I hope and believe that all the information that has been shared through the session will be of a great help and resource to you. In the upcoming sessions, we shall talk more about the foundations of the individual behavior and its patterns. But until then, stay tuned, stay blessed, and stay enlightened forever. Thank you once again for joining me today on this wonderful session.